Well, hello, you. How have you been? I hope you've been amazingly wonderful. I have an announcement for you today. EETV now offers memberships. You should see the Join Now button, and if you become a member or what I like to call the EETV tribe, you will get exclusive content, motivational Monday chats with me, vlogs, and also mukbangs. So, yes, check it out. Along with each tier of membership, there's, of course, different levels of access and even the option of having a monthly phone call with me or doing video collabs with me. So, check out how to become a part of the EETV tribe. For those of you who have said you would like to see a different side of me, you'd like to see more Felicia and less Attorney Pearson, well, here's your chance. Check us out in the membership options by clicking the Join Now button. I hope you become a member of the tribe. See ya. Well, hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Empowered Esquire TV. If you are an OG and you are returning to the program, it's nice to see you again. And if you are a newbie, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please like, share, and subscribe. And hey, even if you dislike, it's all right, right, Miss Rye? It's all right? Miss Algorithm doesn't care, and so neither do we. So, today I have an exciting, riveting discussion for you today. But before we hop in, we always have our, transparency, real talk moments. So, let me give you my little story of woe first. You all, I decided to start doing like a chest workouts at the gym, because I'm really on this whole women should be strong too, that whole jazz. And I overdid it. I overdid it. Hence why you don't see me today. Um my chest is hurting so badly right now. Ow, ow, it hurts when I laugh. It hurts so it hurts, you guys. I am sitting here in pain. So anyway, hence why you're not seeing me today. And hopefully I can not try to kill myself in the gym next time. So anyway, I'm in the chat saying hello to everyone. If you are in the bushes, give me a hello. Hello to Brett Edwards. Hello to April Showers. Hello to Crime Spotter. It is so good to see all of you. So I know you all have been waiting and asking and requesting to have this convo, right? This is the convo that everyone wants to have. So we're going to talk about, well, the jab. And we're going to have a conversation about whether or not these mandates are legal, right? Will they hold up in court, these mandates? And also, can employers, can public places, things like that, can these entities actually mandate that someone get the jab? Is it legal? Now, there's been a lot of back and forth online about this. Many people saying that it is not legal, it is not constitutional. And of course, many people saying, well, hey, in fact, it actually is legal. So, listen, we're gonna sit. Oh my goodness. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but someone's car is going off outside. You guys know the loveliness of living in the city, right? Um, so let's hope that this fades in a moment. Let's give it a moment. Ah, and it did. Alrighty. So I could give you the short answer, right? Where I could just tell you flat out what the answer is, but I don't want to ruin it for you. So we're going to dive into the law behind the jab. I'm going to put the link to the StreamYard show in the chat a little later on, of course, after we discuss the law, and allow some of you to come on up onto the panel with me and share your questions, give your opinions, all of those things. And then somewhere in there, around there, I'm going to give you the short answer, right, as to whether or not these mandates are legal. So Jamar says, know your limit in the gym. Huh, Jamar, I'm learning the hard way. Okay. I've learned the hard way what my limit is. Literally, as I'm speaking, my chest is hurting. Crime Spotter says, I know some use the word Vaseline. Oh, okay. I like that. Vaseline. We're gonna go with Vaseline. All righty. And Crime Spotter says, the late Leroy Colbert says that you never leave the gym exhausted. Really? I didn't know that. What would be the reason that you don't want to leave the gym exhausted? Hmm. Do share because I am curious. I'm wondering what that reason would be. Alrighty, anywho, let's play with this a bit. I think we'll keep it like that, right? And let's go ahead and queue up some of the law and analysis that I would like to share with you today. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this channel, you might be new here, I take you straight to the source. So, you learn about a lot of organizations that you may not have known about before, right? Whose business it is and whose job it is to cover whatever it is your question is. And today, the organization I am introducing you to is the National Constitution Center. Okay. Now we're going to head on to their website. First, I'll show you the actual article, but then we'll see a little bit about them, right? So you have kind of some idea as to who they are and what it is that they do. And they actually published a kind of synopsis, if you will, of the current constitutional issues related to vaccine mandates. Okay. So let me cue that up for you. Let me hop back into the chat. Okay. Crime Spotter says that Leroy Colbert suggested full body workouts. Oh, okay. Okay. I can see how that makes sense. All righty. Here we go. I am going to, of course, share my screen. Okay. All right, here we are. Now I'm going to make this larger for you. Perfect. Okay, so here we are on the constitutioncenter.org. So we're here at the website for the National Constitution Center. So first, let's see what they're about, right? For those of you who maybe you've never heard of this organization before, okay? So the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia brings together people of all ages and perspectives across America and around the world to learn about, debate, and celebrate the greatest vision of human freedom in history, the U.S. Constitution. Okay? So, the center has Museum of We the People. They also hold America's Town Hall. They also have a headquarters for civic education. And in doing so, as you can see, they run an entire center dedicated to educating people about the Constitution. Deal? Okay, so now you know the National Constitution Center. So now here we go. Current constitutional issues related to vaccine mandates. Okay, we'll take it from the top. The COVID-19 Delta variant spread may force federal and state authorities to re examine public safety policies related to vaccine requirements. Here is a brief review of the constitutional precedents and laws related to mandates at the federal and state level. So we know what to expect, right? We know that we are going to hear about case law. That's what precedent is. Precedent is case law, right? And then we know we're going to hear about actual law, which is statutes and codes that apply to this whole, oh, I may have said the word already. Did I? Vaseline. Oh, goodness. Am I too late? Well, it is what it is. Alrighty. In general, two key Supreme Court decisions speak to the authority of state and local officials to issue Vaseline mandates. Generally, these decisions concluded that these governments may tell people to get Vaseline unless they belong to an exempt group or face a penalty. In 1905, the Supreme Court ruled in Jacobson v. Massachusetts. So, pause, learning moment. What is that? Case law, right? Because here we have a case, Jacobson v. Massachusetts, which applies to Vaseline. Okay. So, allegedly, in this case, it was ruled that under a state law, local health authorities could, meaning they could, compel adults to receive the smallpox Vaseline. Henning Jacobson refused a free smallpox Vaseline that was mandated by the city of Cambridge. He was fined $5 as a result. Aha! Pause. Listen to what we are reading, folks. Back in 1905, the Supreme Court ruled that it was legal for health authorities to mandate Vaseline. And not only did they say that, they said that if you chose not to take the Vaseline, you would have to pay a financial fine. Uh-huh. Okay. Jacobson argued that the Vaseline law violated his 14th Amendment due process right. Hmm. Interesting argument to make. Huh? I guess his argument was probably built upon him saying that he should have had more of a process before being deprived of the right to his own body. I can imagine so, but listen, here's what we'll do next. Open link in new tab. I'm going to check it out for you. Oh, it's the actual case. Awesome. So, you know where we're headed next, right? That's right. We're headed on over to the actual case of Jacobson v. Massachusetts. But before we do, I'm back in the chat saying hello, seeing if there are any questions. Hello to Jenny A. Let's see. I don't see any questions. Are there any? Hello to Nappy Yankee. And yes, please like, share, and subscribe. And hey, listen, as I always say, like or dislike, Miss Algorithm don't care. So neither do we. We just appreciate your presence and your input. Okay. Crime Spotter says, I know some Caribbean countries are looking to apply mandates in the public sector. Yes, I have heard about that as well. Does anyone have any questions about what we've discussed thus far before we hop into the case of Jacobson v. Massachusetts? Any questions? Going once? Going twice? Alrighty, now we are going to hop into the article. So share screen again. As you know, it is my way to announce it. Why? I don't know. Here we are. So you are on Oyez. So now allow me to introduce you to yet another useful tool. Okay, everyone? So Oyez, also known as oyez.org, right, is a website which you can look up cases, right? You can look up what happened in the case. You can look up the main question that was covered in the case and also the conclusion. Now, Oyez usually does not offer you this very detailed explanation. It really gives you a quick explanation. So, oyez.org is really a tool for someone who, listen, I just want to know the basics. I don't need to dive into every detail of this case, right? Okay, so oyez.org. I should have done this with the National um, Constitution Center, so I'll do that next. I hope I said their name correct. But I will put the link to Oyez in the chat. And now I'm putting constitutioncenter.org in the chat as well. What on earth? Why is it that I went to copy constitutioncenter.org for you all and instead it tried to take me to a totally different website? Okay, there we go. Alrighty, so let me give some more shout outs. Hello to Silos Congas. You look new. I think you might be a newbie. Welcome. Welcome. So Silos Congas would like to know if there are laws that can counter the Vaseline. Well, we will get there. And a big hello to KKC. Thank you for joining us. Hello to Spotum Shotum. Spotum says this is proof that you can sue because of COVID mandates. Interesting. Is it? Oh, can't sue. Okay. Spotum says can't sue. Well, it looks like that's what this case law is saying. Okay, but let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are. Jacobson v. Massachusetts, argued in 1904, decided in 1905, right? Also, something very good to know. Also, we know that it was a Supreme Court case. So we know that this case went all the way to the Supreme Court and or initiated there, right? But more than likely traveled there. And how do we know that? When you look at the case citation and you see US here, that means that is the court that this final decision was rendered in. So whenever you see US, that means the highest court in the land, also known as the Supreme Court of the United States, also known as SCOTUS. Got it? All right. Facts of the case. And if you really want to be like a total law nerd, you can just say SCOTUS, right? If you say SCOTUS to a law student or a paralegal or an attorney, they'll know that you know what you're talking about, right? We call it SCOTUS. Okay. Facts of the case. A Massachusetts law allowed cities to require residents to be vaccinated against smallpox. Okay. So this city in Massachusetts was saying you are required to get the Vaseline. Cambridge adopted this ordinance with some exceptions. Jacobson refused to comply with the requirement and was fined $5. Okay. So notice this law wasn't even based on profession. It wasn't even based on activities, right? It was simply based on if you're going to live here, you must get the Vaseline. Okay. Now the question was, did the mandatory Vaseline violate Jacobson's 14th Amendment right to liberty? Aha. You see what I said when we just looked at the article? Remember I said due process. I'm sure he argued that he had a right to his person, right? A right to liberty, and that right was violated without proper due process by them just mandating a Vaseline and then fining him, right? Looks like we were correct. Conclusion. The court held that the law was a legitimate exercise of the state's police power to protect the public health and safety of its citizens. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. The court held that the law was a legitimate exercise of the state's police power to protect the public health and safety of its citizens. Everyone, that is the answer, everyone. So remember, we talk about rights and we say, yes, you have rights, but those rights have limitations because the government has interest that can trump your personal right. Remember, we often talk about this and how this applies. And people, this is one of those moments. Yes, you have a right to liberty. Yes, you have a right to your person. Yes. But the government has interests that can trump yours. And public health and safety are considered to be one of those interests in which they can say, hey, listen, all bets are off. Okay. We know you have all these personal rights. That's great. But yeah, put them on pause for a minute because our interests are higher than yours in this issue. Okay. Now, what I wanted to mention on that is be mindful of the words that are being used here. Okay. There is a reason that it is being made very clear that this is a global pandemic, right? There's a reason that those words are being used because those words trigger the government interest. So even when you look at many CDC regulations, which we may or may not do today because those regulations are, I mean, you want to talk about boring. My goodness. But even when you look at many CDC regulations, right, you will see that there are certain situations that must occur to trigger the regulation, to trigger the Congress to have to initiate some type of action in accordance with that regulation. So, in other words, the CDC and all of your local and state and federal authorities have the right to step in when a serious health crisis is happening. That is why calling what's been happening a global pandemic was essential to the government, the CDC, and your local authorities being able to trigger their interest to now start mandating that you get the Vaseline. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? If you are with me and you get it, put a Y in the chat. If you have a question about that, drop your question. Alrighty, I'm seeing nothing but Y's coming in. I'm not seeing any questions, so I will take this moment to have a scheduled, not really scheduled, kind of sort of scheduled commercial break. Please like, share, and subscribe. And hey, whether it's like or dislike, Miss Algorithm don't care, and so neither do we. Alrighty. I think hello to M Mac. How you doing? All right, everyone has a Y in the chat, so you guys are good on this. All right, so we're going to go back to the Constitution Center and their article. Okay. All right. Oh, I do see a question. Silos Congas would like to know. Oh, let me get rid of this so we can see your question better. Is this coming from the UN? So, for those of you who may not know this, I know that you hear about the UN and they sound really powerful, right? They're not. They're not. um, a lot of member countries choose to disregard or disavow things that are said by the UN. The UN does not have the power to enforce anything. So, nothing that comes from the UN can be enforced, especially not over the interest of the US government. Okay, so don't think that any of this is coming from the UN. This is the US government doing what they feel they are within their rights and powers to do. The US government does not take orders from the UN. Okay. If anything, it might be the other way around. Okay. But that's a no. All right. Headed back into the article here. Of course, I always announce that I am sharing my tab. Again, why? I don't know. And why would it be trying to take us somewhere else? I don't understand it. Okay, so we are back into our article. Here we go. So we've read Jacobson v. Massachusetts, so we totally get that. Now, we see here a little bit more of a detail as to what happened there. Okay, so Justice Harlan wrote, "It is for the legislature and not for the courts to determine in the first instance whether Vaseline is or is not the best mode for prevention of smallpox and protection of the public health." So, in other words, even though the court upheld the Vaseline mandate, they did acknowledge that they believe that it is first the role of the legislature to determine these things, right? Which is exactly what we discussed. The Congress, right? And your state and local legislature. Okay. Now we fast forward a bit. So the second decision, Zucht v. King in 1922, also arrived at a similar conclusion. So now we have a case in 1904 that said, yes, it is legal to mandate Vaseline. Now we have a case in 1922 that says, yes, it is legal to mandate Vaseline. So what happened here? Well, in San Antonio, Texas, there were students who were told they could not go to public school or private school because they were not Vaselined from smallpox. Okay. Now, the plaintiff argued that the Vaseline policy, again, same argument, violated her 14th Amendment due process rights. Justice Brandes said, "Listen, we've already discussed this in Jacobson v. Massachusetts, and it is settled that it is within the police power of a state to provide for compulsory Vaseline. In other words, we already told you that they can do this." But I want us all to take note of something here, everyone. You see that? Notice that Zucht made the same argument that Jacobson did. So now at this point, we can stop and have a learning moment where we say, well, I wonder how it turns out when a different argument is made. And I wonder if a different argument has ever been made. Huh? Okay. I am back in the chat saying hello to everyone. And again, if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat box. I will be opening up the floor for people to call in a little later on in the show. Okay. I don't see any questions, so we will hop back in. Okay. So here we go, 1922. All right, now we see something that's getting a little bit more recent. Okay, so we see there was a recent lawsuit in which a federal court declined to grant an injunction against a university's Vaseline mandate. So, yet again, the same outcome. Now, what happened here? 8 Indiana University students sued a school over a mandatory Vaseline policy. What did they argue? Huh. Let's see. Now, we see that there was a mandatory Vaseline policy. We did see that students could apply for medical or religious exemption if they agree to wear a mask and undergo, not, you see that testing. Okay. Um, so on August 2nd, 2021, a federal appeals court upheld a lower court ruling in favor of the university, finding that there was not enough evidence that the students' constitutional rights were being violated. Mhm. But what we want to know, though, right, is what was the argument that they made? So let's see where recent lawsuit brings us. I'm going to open in a new tab and hope that it brings me to the actual case, does it? Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it does. All righty. Let's see here. Oh, this might be juicy. I'm going to browse it for a moment. Okay, yes, yes. Alrighty, so I'm going to hop back into the chat for a moment. Um, Nappy Yankee is giving me yet another recommendation. Just say Juke. Actually, we're going with Vaseline. I like Vaseline. Okay, Octavius Prime has a question. Great Governor Ron DeSantis ended the emergency pandemic payments for unemployment, citing that it was voluntary. Can he do the same thing with Vaseline mandates while being in the state of emergency? Well, I imagine that, yes. I imagine that a governor could end Vaseline mandates in their state, right? Of course, barring that they're not violating any federal law. So, yes, that is within a governor's power to say, hey, within my constituency, there are no mandates. And we see that. We see that you go to certain states and there's no mandate. For example, you go to Florida and you can go to a restaurant. You can pretty much do whatever you want, right? But you go to the state of New York, and if you're unvaselined, you can't eat indoors. You can't go to the gym. You can't go to the museum. There are a lot of things you cannot do in the state of New York without Vaseline, whereas in Florida, you can. So, yes, a governor can make those sort of calls. All right. So, Silos Conga says, what's the world agenda in all this? But that's not the conversation that we're having, Silos. Here's the thing. No one is invalidating your perspective. I would never do that. But that is not the conversation that we're having. And you see, what we do here is we have very poignant, focused conversations about the law. You're asking an existential question that really doesn't apply to the conversation that we're having. Okay. All right. So, any other questions? No, no. All right. So, guess what I got for you? I got to do stop. I got to do stop screen first to show you what else I've got for you. So, that link actually led us straight to the lawsuit. Isn't that awesome? So, this is the lawsuit that was filed August 3rd, 2021 by a professor against his university, right? Um, due to their Vaseline mandates. All right. So we see the professor's name. We see this was in Virginia. Okay. Let's get into it. So the introductory statement just shares some of the relevant, I guess you could say, um, law, if you will. So the plaintiff starts out by talking about the Vaselines and that, in his opinion, they were very rapidly developed, right? He then goes in to discuss that he was employed at George Mason University, and that George Mason University announced on June 28th, 2021, that they would be mandating the Vaseline, right? Or if you didn't take the Vaseline, you would have to wear a mask on campus, socially distance, right? And undergo frequent testing. Okay. So, in other words, you could either be Vaselined or wear your mask, and get tested. Okay. Now, the professor argues that due to the fact that he already had, twice, he has natural immunity. Okay. He then goes on to talk about antibodies and some other things like that, right? Now he goes into the Constitution. He says that his rights under the Ninth and the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution are being violated by this policy. He says the policy constitutes an unconstitutional condition because it is poorly calibrated to protect the public health, yet it poses disproportionate risk on some of its targets. That renders the policy an unlawful condition insufficiently germane to its purported purpose. Wow, legalese there. Allow me to tell you what he just said, because honestly, what he just said really, it's a stroke of genius. So the arguments that we heard in the past cases were the due process argument of, I have a right to my body, I have a right to liberty, you're violating that, right? But this is not the same argument. This argument is, yes, government, you have the right to protect the public health, but your Vaseline mandate does not properly protect public health because it is hoisting a rapidly rushed vaccine over natural immunity. And the science says that natural immunity is better. Therefore, if you're not actually effectively protecting public health, then your interest that you have that is, above my right, well, you didn't trigger your interest properly because you're not actually protecting anyone. Huh. Now listen, agree or disagree with that argument, it is genius. Genius. To say to the government, hey, listen, I get your power and I agree. But if you're not actually protecting anyone, then your power has not been triggered. Well, as we all know, he didn't win. Okay, so genius and thought provoking as the argument was, we know that he did not win. The court ultimately ruled that George Mason University had the right to mandate the Vaseline or to mandate strict regulations if the person is unvaselined. Now I am back in the chat, per my usual, looking to see any questions that anyone has about what we have discussed thus far. Okay. And I do not see any as of right now. So I'm going to give you a few seconds. I'll take a sip of water. All right. I see no questions. So listen, we're going to hop back into our article and round it on up. Chrome tab. All right, here we are. So again, we know that as genius as the argument was, it was still deemed that no, George Mason University has the right to require the Vaseline. Okay. Now we get into state powers. Now, states have a broad power to control Vaseline mandates in their state, in their government levels, and in their private sectors within their state. So, in other words, like we were discussing, state officials can control how Vaseline mandates operate in their state. Hence why you can go to Florida and it's totally laissez-faire. And then you come to New York and it's the exact opposite of that. Okay. Now, the article discusses that at the federal level, the Vaseline mandate question does get, more complicated, because then the question becomes, well, what are the laws that allow for the federal government to do so, right? Although we know that it is unspoken spoken that the federal government has the ultimate interest of protecting general welfare. Okay. Now we see that recently President Joe Biden ordered federal employees and contractors to attest to getting Vaseline or to undergo weekly testing and other safety protocols. Okay, so we know that while it is not being mandated, ugh, and for those of you who don't know, it is not being mandated for employees in the White House to be Vaselined. They are not being required to be Vaselined. But as we see here, they are being required, if not Vaselined, to undergo weekly testing, probably wear a mask and, other regulations. Okay. Now we get into some more interesting stuff. So, here, under the Constitution's spending clause, Congress could provide financial incentives for states to enact mandates. So, many of you had the question of, well, let's say that every other state in the country has adopted Vaseline mandates and Florida just won't get with it. Florida is just like, no, we won't do it. Is there something the federal government could do to try to force the state government to comply? Well, yes, there is. Remember, the federal government and the Congress are the purse of this nation. Many of these states could not run. They could not function without funding from the federal government. So really, at the end of the day, the strongest power that the federal government has over each state is money. And it is well argued that if it comes down to it and you still have your holdout states like your Florida and Texas and Georgia and whoever, the federal government will just pull money and force them to comply. Okay. All righty. So now they get into several federal laws that do allow for Vaseline exemptions based upon religious beliefs, right? And disability status. That's another conversation to have. In the past, there have been exemptions to having a Vaseline, right? But keep in mind that even before this whole global pandemic, those exemptions had already started to be rolled back. You already saw several states that were saying, hey, we are revoking religious exemption. You already saw several states saying, if you want to send your child to public school, they must be Vaselined. No more religious exemption. And California is one of those states. So even before all of this, you already started to see a rollback. Our country was already rolling back on exemptions for Vaselines. So now, unsurprisingly, right, they're saying that a lot of these exemptions should not apply to COVID. Why? Go back to wording. Because it is a global pandemic, which triggers government interest over private rights. Got it? Okay. So yeah, Vaseline exemptions based upon religious beliefs will remain an important question. It will develop and develop and develop, okay? And that is the gist of our National Constitution Center rundown, okay? I see some questions in here. All right, Octavius Prime says HLV is automatically deemed a disability under the Equality Act 2010 for the purposes of discrimination law. Could not this emergency act violate the Equality Act of 2010, being that it is a virus? Well, I think that's partially a medical question. And what I think it will come down to is that ultimately these mandates will probably say, if you have some type of medical reason why you cannot be Vaselined, then yes, you can remain unvaselined. But I do think that religious exemption from Vaseline may see itself becoming almost eradicated. Okay. Sheba Mooncat, how are ya? Sheba says, does mandate mean it's a law? Mandate means it's mandatory to be done, meaning you have to do it. It is codified by some law that you have to do it. And Sheba says she's late. She's in the beginning of the video. That's totally fine. That is totally fine. Alrighty, everyone. So we are at 2:40. So I'm going to check out what else I had queued up for you that I wanted to share with you, and then kind of, consider with time, as the main consideration as to when exactly I am going to start bringing people up. I think I really want to share this one though, because this is an article. It's an opinion article, mind you, because I want you to remember, and let me make this clear. Anyone who is speaking to you about these Vaseline mandates, they are giving you their opinion, right? Educated opinion, probably. Yeah, most certainly. But opinion nonetheless. Okay. We have to ultimately see what ends up shaking out in some of our higher courts, right? Now, we can look at the past law and we can make a very educated opinion. But again, we have to see how this shakes out to really know what the true answer is, right? Okay. So I am in the chat. I don't see any questions. So I'm going to hop into this article written specifically about President Biden's Vaseline mandates. And after we discuss that, I am going to put the StreamYard link in the chat and allow anyone who would like to come on up. All right. All right. Let me go ahead and remove this. You guys know I always announce when I'm sharing my screen. Why? I just do. All right, so here we go. This was written on October 8th. This was yesterday. Biden's Vaseline mandates are clearly constitutional. Again, you see that this is in an opinion section, right? So we know this is the opinion of the author, but let's see what's used to back up his opinion, right? And in the meantime, I am going to find for you, it may actually end up being a Candace Owens video. But I want to find at least one person, because let me tell you, it's easier, right? To find someone who is saying that Vaseline mandates are legal. But I really wanted to show you even just one, even if I can show you just one opinion, because I'd like you to see both sides. I'd like you to see both sides of the coin on this conversation. So I think it may end up being Candace Owens, because I really want someone who succinctly describes the argument, that says, I feel that this is unconstitutional. And I think Candace is going to be the most succinct source for that. So I'm going to find that in a moment. But while I look for it, let's hop back into our article, shall we? Okay, so gobbledygook about President Biden, that's not what we want. We want the details, right? Okay. Well, this person gives us a brief one. Claims of unconstitutionality are twofold. So the people who are arguing that Vaseline mandates are illegal because they violate the Constitution, their argument is, first, mandates violate individual rights, such as free exercise of religion or a right to bodily integrity. Remember, we had that conversation, right? That flows into the 14th Amendment due process. And we see that in the past, it hasn't worked. Now, I have to say, just because it has not worked in the past does not mean it will never work, right? Does not mean it won't work today or tomorrow. However, comma, it does mean that it's not as likely to work. That's what it means. When you see a past case or two past cases in which an argument is used and it doesn't work, it does mean that it's not likely to work in the future, although it doesn't mean that it is impossible. All right, so hello to you, Akata. You, Akata, would like to know, is this conversation just about mandates or is it about efficacy? We are only discussing mandates and whether or not mandates will hold up in court. Okay. All right, so I am back in our article. Now, we already talked about the individual rights conversation. We don't need to go there again. Okay. And we already talked about congressional power, so we don't need to go there again. Now, I want to get, this is where I want us to get to. So let's have this conversation. The Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. So remember, we talked about the fact that the Congress has a general overarching government interest, right? However, we talked about the fact that there are specific regulations, specific laws and statutes that were created for this situation exactly, for pandemics, for epidemics, things like that. Okay. The Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 requires employers to maintain conditions or adopt practices reasonably necessary and appropriate to protect workers on the job, with the goal of assuring safe and healthful working conditions. Now, I bet when you hear that, you only think about construction sites, right? Or, someone slipping and falling at work. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Open your mind and realize that one of the biggest beauties of legislation is that very often it is drafted in a way in which, when enforced, it is boundless, limitless, stretching into places and situations that you maybe wouldn't even imagine. So now, when you think about the right and the government interest of public health and safety, you should think about OSHA. Why? Employers who mandate employers who mandate the Vaseline can use OSHA as part of their backing. They can say, hey, listen, under OSHA, it is my job to have healthy working conditions. I have the government saying that this is a global pandemic. So, to be in compliance with OSHA, I have to protect my employees from the pandemic. Does that make sense? I'm going to hop in the chat. Does that make sense? Does everyone see how laws like OSHA, that you would never initially connect to this situation, are in fact part of the reason that employers and such can require that employees be Vaselined? Yeah. All right. I see Jenny A saying she gets it. Okay. So it looks like everyone gets that. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment just so I can hop back into the article. Yeah, that was really the best portion of it that I wanted to share with you. But now I am going to queue up Candace Owens on the mandates, because again, I want you to get a succinct idea of the other side of the argument. And as I said, it's very easy to find um, the side that is in support of legal mandates. So if we if we want the other side, we got to dig a little deeper. And I really want to find someone that succinctly gives you the other side of the argument. Um, Let me find that. I don't know why, because I initially had it saved, and now, of course, all of a sudden it's disappeared. Where is, while I search for it, I'm going to take questions from the chat. Okay, I think I may have found it. Alrighty. It's definitely somewhere on her channel. Let me see. I'm going to hop back into the chat. All right, I see a comment. All right, the comment is, I reside in a city that has primarily made it a mandate in order to return back to both school and work. Every couple of weeks, they're making amendments to the conditions post Vaseline. Yes, that is correct. There are constant updates and changes being made to the Vaseline mandates. And of course, from what I can understand of what's being said, these changes are being attributed to the fact that the Delta variant and all these other things are constantly changing. And so, in order to remain responsive to those things, they have to continue to change the mandates to be responsive. Okay. Okay. I am searching for it, you guys. I know it exists. I know you can't tell me that Candace Owens has not spoken on the vaccine. I know it exists. Let's see. Huh. Da, 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 da. Can I search in someone's channel? Yeah, I can, right? Let's see. Vaseline. Hmm. 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 Okay. I see a few things. I wonder which one could give us the most succinct version of her opinion. You know what? I don't know. I guess we're gonna go with this one. Yeah, although I don't think that's it, but you know what? We're gonna go with this video here. Alrighty, everyone. So I have queued up a video of Candace Owens speaking on the Vaseline and also giving her opinion on Nicki Minaj. So after this video, I will then put the StreamYard link in the chat because then we will have heard both sides of this argument. So are you ready? All right, share screen over here. Let me first make sure that YouTube is not okay, perfect. You know, you got to check YouTube. YouTube will do some sly things. All right, share screen, share tab audio. Perfect. Let's do this view. Okay. All righty, here we go.
Candace. Obviously, we have to get into Nicki Minaj being force-fed the red pill. Honestly, watching her kind of be so shocked and amazed at how the people in the media who she thought were her allies were trying to take her down, like they all got a text message, take out Nicki Minaj. And her response to people like Tucker Carlson and me defending her, it was so reminiscent for me of what it was like for me falling down the rabbit hole when I realized that these people that I thought were my friends were evil. And so she did an Instagram live, and I want to show this clip. Again, sent a very innocent tweet. I know one person who had a reaction. Make sure you think and pray before you make a decision. She didn't say, don't get the vaccine. She didn't say, get the vaccine. She just said, you know, be intelligent, be smart, do your research. And here is a clip of her on her Instagram page. 100,000 people watching live. Millions have seen it since. Here's what she has to say.
I'm not one of those people that y'all are going to be able to do this with, sweetheart. Okay? See, the minute you guys started going this hard is when this seemed strange to me. Like, and I'm not talking about the representative that Joe and Sal spoke to today. I'm talking about just the Democratic Party in general, and so many people jumping at the chance to, okay, well, we can't make fun of the actual story anymore and talk about testicles and balls till they drop dead and make that a joke. So now we have to attack her personally. I want you guys to see what is happening. 80% of the artists that y'all are following right now feel like I feel about the vaccine and are too afraid to speak on it. And guess what they're doing right now? If they assassinate me and assassinate my character and make me look crazy or stupid, guess what? No one else will ever ask questions again.
So this represents an existential crisis for the left, right? Because she's got hundreds of millions of followers, and they are watching live what the media is doing to her. They're watching them essentially just try to take her out. And that's not good, because that could accidentally awaken them to the fact that Nicki Minaj is not the first person try to take out.
It's a win-win scenario right now, because if they take Nicki Minaj out, then Nicki Minaj was right. And if they don't get her, it opens up the door for everybody else to ask more questions. I'm a huge Nicki Minaj fan, have been for a long time. I was actually supposed to be married to her cousin, but there was an incident lately, which
I see.
Yeah, it's on hold now. It's on hold now. But these chairs are comfy.
And here's, by the way, this is another thing she posted. Y'all gotta stop pretending to love people with backbones. If Malcolm X were here, he'd be asking questions, and most of y'all that holler Black Lives Matter and protect Black women would be telling him to shut up and fall in line. Y'all say these people's names but embody the spirit of a coward. I mean, this is amazing stuff, which is why the White House was quick to respond. Jack, by the way, you have an interesting take just to recap what happened with the White House and Nicki Minaj in case anybody wasn't aware.
I think a lot of people were really confused about this dynamic that was coming out where Nicki Minaj said that she had been invited by the White House. People started reporting that she was invited by the White House, but suddenly this statement comes out from an unnamed senior White House official saying that she's not invited to the White House, but it's merely a conversation with the doctor that we'd be happy to arrange, right? What's going on? Candace, the last time that I was on this program, in this very room, what did I tell you? There is a shade war going on right now between who? Team K and Team B, Team Kamala and Team Biden. So pop quiz, which side do you think it was that immediately saw the opportunity here and reached out to Nicki Minaj?
Team K all the way.
Exactly. Team K reaches out. They make the first foray. They make the first communication with Nicki Minaj. Team Biden finds out about it from the press because they were trying to run an end around. And I imagine that you probably had a red-haired kind of shrill voice as that senior staffer saying, well, there isn't an official an invitation coming out here and we'll have to circle, not around. Yes, yeah, totally anonymous. No, that's what's going on here. And so to understand that this is more of the shade war that we talked about the last time that's coming out now because Kamala Harris was trying to sit down with Nicki Minaj and cut Joe Biden out.
Right. I mean, this is insane. And I am shocked at how vicious they were. And within 24 hours, they even had the Trinidad health minister speak out, right? Trinidad minister criticizes rapper's vaccine tweet. And he came out and he basically said she's a liar. And we've been busy the last 24 hours seeing if what she said was true and it was wrong. I just want to be very clear. They've administered a million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine in Trinidad. I looked into it.
Wow.
All right. And somehow this minister within 24 hours was able to verify that absolutely no one had a reaction. And I mean, this is crazy stuff. And there are people that just believe it. They eat it up. They just think there's no way what Nicki Minaj says is true. And they just accept that it's only true if it comes from Dr. Fauci. Like there's just no way that human beings are having a bad reaction to the vaccine.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful thing to watch, really, just to see how hard everybody's going at Nicki Minaj. And I think they messed with the wrong girl because she's not backing down from the fight. And to what you're saying, I would love to be a fly in the Oval Office when somebody was trying to explain who Nicki Minaj was to Joe Biden. He's just like,
a mirage. That was a good one.
A mirage. I don't know. A tricky Minaj. My butt's been wiped.
I have a feeling Hunter might know.
Hunter,
Right. I have
exactly.
a feeling. I have honestly, if you have a gun in my head,
I'd go with Hunter.
Yeah.
Going online without expressing.
All right, everyone. So now we have a well-rounded concept, right? We now know both sides of the argument. Now I see it. Well, first of all, shout out to Karen J. Thank you so much, Karen J, for supporting the channel. Thank you. Round of applause for Karen J. Karen J, I'm going to get an actual applause sound effect just for you. All righty. Now, there was a comment that I wanted to address. All right. So Jay Christopher says, why is Candace the representative against mandates? Why not Senator Rand Paul, who is a medical doctor? Hello, Jay Christopher. This is the first time that I'm seeing you, so I think you're a newbie, okay? Senator Rand Paul, for those of you who don't know and would like to know, has said that natural immunity is better than the Vaseline. We've covered that. So if there's something else that Senator Rand Paul has said, Jay Christopher, that you would like us to address, please feel free to drop it in the chat or feel free to join me here on StreamYard. I am putting the link in the chat. Everyone, come on up. You are welcome to join me up here. Remember, this is a live call-in show. And ask questions, give your opinion, have dialogue. Let's do it. So, Jay Christopher, you're welcome to come on up if there's something else about Senator Paul's stance that you would like us to know. All right. Hello to Bad A Truckin' Babe. How are ya? And I see one of my faves is here, Mara Charisse. Mara Charisse, we are discussing the Vaseline mandates. And so we first started with the argument, in support of those mandates, and we ended by hearing the argument in opposition to those mandates. So now we are armed with both arguments. All right. Hello to the truth. Hello to Tyrol. Okay. All righty. So, Silos Congas, if this is not the conversation that you would like to have, then respectfully, perhaps this is not the conversation that you would like to have. Got it? All righty. So, here is the link. You all, the link is in the chat. If you want to come on up to ask questions, to give your opinion, to have a dialogue, you are welcome to do so. Link is in the chat. And in the meantime, we'll have a little chitty chat. So, you all know that we now have a podcast. I mean, if you did not know, where have you been? Okay. So, the podcast is available on Anchor, Google, Spotify. Where else? Sheesh. It's available in a lot of different forums. And it is the same title as this channel. It is Empowered Esquire. Each podcast is a quick episode, usually anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, where we discuss motivation, we discuss current events, we discuss politics, a lot of things that we're not necessarily going to discuss for an hour on the channel, right? But still want to have some type of convo about. Oh, Mara Sharice just said something very interesting. So Mara Sharice says Rand Paul is an eye doctor. Ah, that's very, is he? Let me see, girl. Let me see. So Rand Paul, we're gonna give it a simple Google. Rand Paul eye doctor? Question mark. Da, 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 da. Rand Paul. Yeah, he is. Wow. Okay. That's correct, everyone. Senator Rand Paul is an eye doctor. Okay. Not an immunologist or anything like that. Nappy Yankee has a question. Nappy Yankee would like to know, could there be a class action suit against the government mandate? Yes. So I imagine that we will see class action suits against these mandates. And that is where we are going to see whether or not these mandates hold up in court. Now, we know the arguments on both sides. We know that the 14th Amendment due process argument, we know that argument has not been successful. We then saw another nuanced argument about, well, if the government isn't properly protecting anyone, they haven't triggered their interest. That argument didn't work. So we'll have to see if there are some arguments that can be made that will actually work, you all. We have someone that has decided to come upstairs with me. All righty, let me just send my new guest a little private message, letting him know, I believe it's a male, that I'm going to invite him up in a sec. All right, and we also have Octavius Prime who has joined us. So I am going to more than likely bring everyone on up in order with them actually joining the chat, of course, right? All righty, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to add Negus Roselle first. And I'm also going to go ahead and add Octavius Prime. All righty, so hello, gentlemen. What is about to happen is I am going to unmute the mic of Mr. Roselle first, being that he joined us first. And then I'm going to unmute the mic of Mr. Octavius Prime, and we're going to have a dialogue. Now, Mr. Roselle, you did send me a video you said you wanted me to check out. Interesting. So it appears that this video is discussing people who have had the Vaseline that have had negative health effects. Again, we are aware of that. We are aware that there have been some people who have taken the Vaseline and they've been totally fine. And listen, we know this. I know people who have had the Vaseline and they were totally fine. I also know people who have had the Vaseline and they were not totally fine. I think almost everyone can say that. I don't think there's anyone who can honestly say they haven't seen both. We have all seen both. Okay, so we know that. All righty. Mr. Roselle, you're unmuted. Introduce yourself.
Hello, and thank you for having me on. So my question is, as a indigenous person of America, um, how far does this mandate stretch? Even the Aboriginal people, such as like the Cherokee or Choctaw, are they up under this mandate as well?
So that is an interesting question. Now, Mr. Roselle, by indigenous person, do you mean that you are a Native American? Are you registered as a member of a tribe?
Yes, ma'am. I'm with the Coosa tribe, and also we are part of the Cherokee Nation as well.
Aha, very interesting. So, as I'm sure you know, Mr. Roselle, Indian tribes, Indian reservations operates completely on their own law, right? So, indigenous peoples, Native Americans have separate laws, separate governing bodies, and things of that nature. Now, here's what I will say. I do not think that the US government will ever try to mandate what happens on Native American property, right? So, for example, on a reservation or any other property that is clearly under the jurisdiction of an indigenous tribe or a Native American tribe. I don't foresee that. I don't foresee the government being able to say, hey, we're going to impose mandates here. However, let's say, for example, you had a property that is a reservation for the Cherokee tribe, right? Let's just use Nevada, just random, right? And Nevada decides to institute a Vaseline mandate. Well, I would imagine that while on the reservation, if there is no Vaseline mandate under the Native American law, then hey, you're fine. But I would imagine that once you leave that reservation and you now go into the territory of the state of Nevada, let's say to go to a restaurant, to go to a museum, to go to school, right? Then the state could step in and say, we're imposing our mandate on you. So, not on native property, but on state property, yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, I am going to unmute Octavius Prime. Oh, wait, Octavius Prime, you've muted yourself, so I can't unmute you. So,
Okay.
when you're ready-
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm a big fan.
Thank you very much, Octavius Prime.
Yes. I know someone mentioned Rand Paul, and I think the reason why he mentioned him was because of the fact that he mentioned a study of scientists out of Israel who did a study on people who've had previous infections who never received the Vaseline had a 27% more effectiveness against the Delta. You get what I'm saying? So now I'm trying to get my words together so I don't say anything. And because of that, I guess what he's trying to say that because of the infections in the United States was well over 100 million. Would the government still have that same interest by giving the Vaseline to individuals who have been previously infected, and would that also being that it would decrease the effectiveness against the Vaseline, but against the coffee or whatever you want to call it?
So I like coffee. I think we'll
Yeah.
use that. So, Octavius, were you here when we talked about the professor who sued George Mason University?
Oh no, I wasn't. I came in last.
So earlier in the stream, we talked about a professor who was working at George Mason University, and he sued George Mason University because they initiated a Vaseline mandate. They said all professors have to be Vaselined, or if you're unvaselined, and then they had a list of regulations that came along with it. And in his lawsuit, he made that argument. He said, I have natural immunity. And
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
He said, and these mandates are not taking natural immunity into consideration, and therefore they're not actually effective, which means the government has not properly triggered their interest to protect the public because they're not actually protecting the public. Right?
Yes, and that's the same thing that Rand Paul is saying. Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you know what the court said?
Oh, what did they say?
The court said no. The court said that the government still has the right to mandate the Vaseline. They do not have to take into consideration case by case arguments such as natural immunity.
Wow.
Yes. So that has been addressed. Now we see Jay Christopher. Jay Christopher has commented that the government has not mandated anything. So which government are you referring to? Because there are state mandates all over the country, and state government is still government. Hello to Truth Soldier. How are you? Hello to B Jackson. B Jackson, I see that you said something here. B Jackson said here, I should come on, but she may not be ready for me. Interesting of you to say. I'm with it today, y'all. I'm in my bag today. Interesting of you to say, B Jackson, when you have no picture and you're not up here. So why don't you come on up? Let me get the link again. Okay, because I have, you know what I look like, right? And I'm up here and I'm here. So B Jackson, come on up and do share with us, right? Do not hide behind the screen and say that I'm not ready. I may surprise you. And I'm nice, I don't bite. All right, Mara Cherie says, I wish mandates didn't have to take place, but because we have to feed capitalism, we have to get back to normal. And this is the solution that the government has come up with. Interesting perspective. A lot of businesses and organizations were uncomfortable coming back to business until we had these mandates. That is, a poignant argument to make. Okay. Mara also says that she doesn't know anyone. She personally doesn't know anyone who took the Vaseline and isn't okay. And you know what, Mara, that's a blessing. That's a blessing for you to be able to say. Because as I've said, unfortunately, it's split down the middle. I know people who took the Vaseline and they're fine. And then I know people who took the Vaseline and had to be hospitalized, or took the Vaseline and were, on their deathbed for 2 weeks. Or took the Vaseline and then got COVID. It's very strange. So for me, it's split down the middle. I know, like I said, plenty of people who they were just fine. It was like, oh, whatever, totally fine the next day. And then plenty of people who it just almost took them out. So it's very strange. And honestly, what I think it comes down to, and you know what, let me retract that statement. I don't think it's strange. I think what it comes down to is that every person is different. Every person's body, chemistry, health, background, familial history, all those things are different. So what I really think it comes down to is just that because we are human beings that are all unique, people are all having unique outcomes. That's what I think it really comes down to. I don't see B Jackson up here. What B Jackson? I'm gonna call you out until thy kingdom come, B Jackson. So I think you should come on up. All right. Bad A Truckin' Babe says, I have natural immunity. I can tell you this for sure. I've been around people all over this country, masked, unmasked, socially distanced, and in very close quarters, and my test came out negative. As I said, different people have been having all types of different results, but I think that's just the nature of being human. I think we're all different. That's pretty much it. Okay. Yuakata says, I appreciate disclosing your personal observations. Thank you, Yuakata. Yuakata, I actually think very deeply about how much to share as far as my personal opinions and personal observations. And I try my very best not to share anything that would sway people, because this is not a propaganda channel, right? I am not here to tell you whether you should be Vaselined or not. I'm not here to tell you whether the Vaseline is right or wrong. It works, it doesn't work. No, because I'm not a doctor. I'm just here to give you both sides of the argument so you know what could happen, right? And what may happen. And that's how we're doing it. So let me put the StreamYard link again, because for some reason, I don't see anyone come. Oh, B Jackson says, on my way. Good. I cannot wait for you to come on up. Karen J says, great live and always appreciate you. Thank you so much, Karen. I always appreciate you. Hello to Zion Movements. All right. So listen, we're going to give B Jackson a moment to come on up here. Mara Cherie said that's not my ministry either. Right. You know, it's not, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a virologist or any of these things that I think would qualify me to sit here and tell the world, hey, you should do this or you shouldn't do that. And that's just my humble opinion. I think anyone who's not a professional in those fields, you should just leave it alone. Okay. And let people, you know, consult with professionals in that realm. That's what I think. Alrighty, so I'm going to take a sip of water while I give you all a moment and while we give B. Jackson a moment to make his way up. And also, let me correct that. B. Jackson could be a woman. I'm actually not sure. So let me make sure that I'm not being impolite in any way, okay? Okay. B. Jackson says she's serious. I don't know if that comment is about me or someone else, but all right. So listen, here is what we will do in the meantime. In the meantime, I'm going to highlight some of the content creators that are in the chat, and we're going to check out the podcast page while we wait for further questions, further conversation, and while we wait for B. Jackson to come on up. Alrighty. So, starting out on the content creator roll call, Nappy Yankee, you all, if you have not checked out Nappy Yankee's channel, you totally should. He covers a lot of pop culture issues, gives his 2 cents, gives his opinion, and also, of course, welcomes the comments and questions and thoughts of others. All right. So, check out Nappy Yankee. All right. Second up in our content creator roll call is KKC. KKC has to be one of the most artful content creators I've seen with production value and sound effects. And I mean, honestly, I'm always like, there's a lot I could learn from him on that. So check out KKC. He also covers pop culture issues, but he tends to delve more into the Umar Johnson and what's that guy's name? Tariq. Doesn't Tariq have a last name? What's Tariq's last name? I can't remember it right now. The mink slide guy. I cannot remember this man's last name. So yes, check out KKC. All right. Scrolling through. I hope I don't miss anyone. I don't think there are any other content creators other than, of course, Badass Truckin' Babe. So check out Badass Truckin' Babe. Her YouTube channel chronicles a lot of her trucking adventures and fitness and things like that. And then we have The Truth. Check out The Truth. She chronicles the R. Kelly case. She actually is from Chicago. I hope I'm right on that, but I feel that I'm right on that. Yes, I know I'm right on that. She actually is from Chicago and has very, very good insight on Chicago. You guys know me. People from Chicago and what they know and their interactions with R. Kelly, right? And she's actually witnessed a lot of things that she shares on her channel. So check her out as well. All right. I don't think now, if you're a content creator and I missed you, please let me know in the chat so I can give you your shout out. All right. Because I don't want to miss anyone. Negus Roselle is a content creator. Go and check out Negus Roselle. Okay. Negus Roselle also has a channel. Tariq Nasheed. Yes, there we go. I don't know why his last name just totally left my mind. I was like, Tariq who? Yeah, Tariq Nasheed. So KKC covers that entire sector. Umar Johnson, Tariq Nasheed, and that whole debacle that goes on over there. Okay. All right, you guys, we're gonna have to just call it a night because it doesn't look like B. Jackson is coming up. B. Jackson, we're gonna give you a couple more minutes, and in the meantime, I'm gonna show everyone how they can find the podcast. Now, I drop an episode or 2, right, every week. So let me pull that up for you guys. You guys are probably hearing me type right now. Such is life. All righty, everyone. Okay, so B. Jackson says that the phone is acting up. Okay, B. Jackson. All right. Bad Trucking Babe says debacle is correct on those guys. I mean, really, it's always a debacle in that side of the land. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen one last time before we head on out so I can show you where you can find the podcast. So, as I said, you can find it on many different places, right? But you can also go to Anchor. Anchor also has an app. Okay, so here we are, anchor.fm/empowered esquire. You see the sign come up. You can also listen on Spotify. You can listen on Breaker, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, and copy the actual episode and listen to it in your free time, right? And Anchor has an app, just as Spotify does. And you can also send me messages on here as well, okay? All right, and so this is just an example of some of our past episodes. As I said, we do about 1 or 2 per week, right? And I'm going to play you all the welcome to the podcast. And I think I'll play people who talk about you as well, okay? All right, so let's give it a listen. All right, welcome to the Empowered Esquire podcast. I hope you are doing wonderful this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you are hearing this. So if you have followed me over here from YouTube, you know that our tagline here is empowering you with legal knowledge. And we plan to continue that here on the podcast. If you are not aware of the YouTube channel, check us out on YouTube at Empowered Esquire TV. And if you'd like to listen to this podcast on YouTube, you can do so at the YouTube channel Empowered Esquire Podcast. But anywho, let's get into it. Hello, hello, hello. I am Phyliciadcpearson, attorney, educator, and entrepreneur. And I am here to help you understand the legal world and how it affects your life. On this podcast, we will discuss current events, politics, and so much more. So to begin the podcast, I'm going to tell you how it all got started. I always loved listening to podcasts and hearing the input and insight of other professionals, but I also really, really liked YouTube and watching different YouTube channels. So I decided to start a YouTube channel first. As the YouTube channel started picking up, I started getting inquiries and requests to start a podcast. And of course, my concern was, well, how am I going to diversify the two, right? Will the podcast be just an extension of the YouTube? Will it be the same content? Will it be different content? Will I have guests? I mean, how would I make this work? So I devised a plan. I sat and I wrote down everything that I liked about all the other podcasts that I listened to in my free time. And after I had devised what I knew was working for me as a listener, I then figured out how to apply that to my skills in speaking and to my skill set as far as legal knowledge and life is concerned, right? And so Empowered Esquire, the podcast, was born. And that is exactly the journey that I am taking you on. We will touch on any and everything happening that we think could be of use to our growth and development. And so, with that being said, I want to have a conversation about getting started. It is very, very common, especially in this age of social media, to never begin something for fear of it not being good enough, for fear of it not being perfect or not looking or appearing to be perfect. And I'm here to tell you, you are holding yourself back. How do I know? Because I've been there. I've been you. It took me years to start a YouTube channel because whenever I would record, it wasn't perfect. It took me a while to get this podcast up because whenever I would record, it wasn't perfect. And you just have to get to a point where you say enough is enough. It will never be perfect, but it will always be me. It will always be authentic. It will always be unique. And let me tell you something, that is enough. You are enough. You don't have to be perfect. So, anywho, welcome to Empowered Esquire. I'm not perfect, I'm just me, and I am here to have authentic, enlightening discourse with you. All right, I'm not sure which one is playing next. Let's see. Oh, that's not the one I wanted to share with you all. I'm going to share one more episode with you all. This one is called People Who Talk About You. But actually, let me pause this for a moment just to hop back in the chat and say hello to everyone. Hello once more. M. Mac says, I'm sold. Thank you, M. Mac. Chris Michael sends a little heart. Thank you, Chris Michael. And shout out to Mara Charisse for signing up for the podcast. Shout out to you. If you'd like one more episode, put a Y in the chat. If not, we'll head on out. So if you want one more episode, give me a Y in the chat. Alrighty, I'm seeing the Y's rolling in. So I'm going to play People Who Talk About You. It's 4 minutes, and then we'll head on out after that. All right, welcome to the Empowered Esquire podcast. I hope you are doing wonderful this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you are hearing this. So if you have followed me over here from YouTube, you know that our tagline here is empowering you with legal knowledge. And we plan to continue that here on the podcast. If you are not aware of the YouTube channel, check us out on YouTube at Empowered Esquire TV. And if you'd like to listen to this podcast on YouTube, you can do so at the YouTube channel Empowered Esquire Podcast. But anywho, let's get into it. So recently I saw this phrase, you will never be talked about by someone doing more than you. You will always be talked about by someone doing less than you. And, I have that moment today. So I want to share that with you all here on the podcast. Welcome. My name is Phyliciadcpearson. I am your host. And today, let's have a chat about people who talk about you, people who insinuate that you do too much. So I shared my podcast with a few people who I know personally, in addition to sharing it on the YouTube channel. And I received an inquiry along the lines of, well, how is this different from the YouTube channel? And the tone was almost why are you doing this? Why are you doing so much? Here's the thing. Before we even get into whether this podcast is different from the YouTube channel, because that's not the real issue that this person has, right? Let's get into the crux of the issue that this person has. Let's say I were to do a podcast, right? And it was exactly the same podcast as the YouTube channel. I mean, no different at all. Let's say this space was no different at all. Would it matter? Is it not still a different format? Is it not still something that my audience expressed interest in? Would it matter if this podcast was no different than the YouTube channel? No, it wouldn't matter. You know why? Because that is not the issue. So know that when you have people who say things to you like, why are you doing so much? You already have one home. Why are you buying another? Why are you already have one business. Why are you starting another? Aren't these two businesses the same? Aren't your two rental properties the same? Right? understand that person is not really asking you a question. What they are doing is exactly the phrase that I saw this morning. They are talking about someone who's doing more than them because they are doing less. So when you receive statements like that, you need to consider, one, who is this statement coming from? Is this someone that is doing more than me? Because if so, maybe it's constructive criticism, right? Or is this someone who is doing less than me? And really, this is just their way of trying to shame me out of progressing because they aren't progressing. Because let me tell you, that is human nature. Someone who wants to progress but doesn't have the guts to put themselves out there will judge someone who does. That's just how it works, right? So, no, you're not doing too much. Everyone that's hearing my voice right now, you're striving, you're trying your best, you're putting yourself out there, you're working hard. You are not doing too much. The person who is judging you because they are doing less. Don't stop. Keep it up. Keep going. And know how to discern the difference between constructive criticism and someone who's just doing less. And because they are doing less, they wish you were doing less. You get it? Anywho, if you want to continue this conversation, send me a message here on Anchor or drop me an email. Have a good one. All righty. So shout out to Mr. Roselle for becoming a member of the channel. Welcome to the EETV tribe. You now have access to exclusive member content. And on that note, I will be dropping new member content this week as well. Okay. And with that being said, I think I am going to go ahead and head on out. So as you know, here on Empowered Esquire TV, we empower you with legal knowledge. I hope you feel powerful and amazing. Why? Because you are. And if you're catching this on the replay, what say you? Do you think the Vaseline mandates are going to hold up? What do you think? Let me know. See you all soon.